The galactic transmission crackled to life, cutting through the static with a grim, sterile authority. The image that emerged was chilling, a cold metallic chamber, its walls reflecting the harsh, white light of an alien tribunal. At the center stood rows of humans, prisoners of war, their faces a mixture of defiance and quiet despair. Surrounding them were members of the Galactic Council, a coalition of alien species, their forms imposing, their eyes void of empathy. The council leader stepped forward, his elongated form towering above the rest. His voice, mechanical and emotionless, resonated through the chamber and into the ears of millions watching the broadcast. Humanity, he declared, is a threat to the balance of galactic peace. Their defiance will not be tolerated. Let this serve as a warning to all who dare challenge the authority of the Galactic Council. The camera shifted to the prisoners. One man, shackled and bloodied, raised his head. His eyes locked onto the lens with a fiery intensity, his expression daring the universe to look away. Even in chains, he exuded a resilience that defied the overwhelming force arrayed against him. The council leader raised a clawed hand, signaling the executioners. The feed abruptly cut off as the sentence was carried out, leaving behind a chilling silence. On Earth, the transmission left a room of leaders in stunned silence. Heads of state, military generals, and diplomats sat frozen, their faces pale with anger and grief. A monitor replayed the last frame, the defiant gaze of the condemned man. The weight of the moment pressed down on everyone present. Finally, a voice broke the silence. It was a senior military commander, her voice steady but laced with fury. This is more than a message. It's a declaration of war. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. The United Nations Secretary-General leaned forward, her hands clasped tightly. "We cannot allow this to stand," she said. "Not just for our people, but for every species under their rule. If we do nothing, we'll prove them right. We'll prove we are weak." The decision was made. A task force would be assembled, its mission clear: rescue any surviving prisoners and send a message of humanity's own. The United States Marines, renowned for their valor and precision, would lead the charge. Around the table, the room galvanized into action. Maps were unrolled, strategies discussed, and resources allocated. In a secure hangar deep beneath the surface, the chosen Marines prepared for their mission. Their leader, a battle-hardened captain, addressed them with quiet intensity. "You all saw what they did. You all know why we're here. This isn't just about saving lives. It's about showing them who we are. They think we're weak. They think we'll kneel. Let's prove them wrong." The hangar was a flurry of activity as the Marines checked their gear, their faces set with grim determination. As the massive steel doors opened, revealing the sleek, dark silhouette of their stealth ship, the captain spoke again. "No hesitation. No mercy. Let's bring them home." As the ship lifted off, the weight of the mission settled over the team. Each Marine carried the memories of the broadcast, the faces of the prisoners burned into their minds. They knew the odds were against them, but they also knew one unshakable truth: humanity never forgets, and humanity never forgives. The Marines moved with precision and purpose, their training evident in every step they took. In the dimly lit armory of their stealth ship, each soldier meticulously checked their equipment, ensuring every weapon and tool was in perfect working order. The air was thick with a tense silence, punctuated only by the soft clinks of metal and the quiet hum of the ship's systems. The squad leader, a seasoned captain with a calm, commanding presence, reviewed the mission parameters one last time. "This isn't just a rescue," he said, his voice steady but low. "We're sending a message. No one executes our people and gets away with it." His words were met with grim nods, the squad's determination palpable. The journey through space was fraught with danger. The Galactic Council's influence extended far, and their patrols were relentless. The stealth ship was state-of-the-art, a product of humanity's rapid technological advancements in the face of intergalactic threats. Its cloaking systems rendered it nearly invisible, but even the smallest mistake could expose them. Approaching the target, the pilot announced, his voice breaking the silence. The Marines shifted in their seats, gripping their weapons tighter. The Galactic Council's stronghold loomed ahead on the view screen, a massive station that glowed ominously against the backdrop of stars. It was a fortress, bristling with defenses and surrounded by patrolling ships. The squad moved into action, their movements synchronized and efficient. The ship systems hummed as the pilot navigated through asteroid fields and sensor grids, exploiting gaps in the station's security. A tactical officer worked furiously at his console, hacking into the station's network to disable key systems. "We've got a 30-second window to slip through their detection," he said, beads of sweat forming on his brow. The Marines prepared for deployment, their faces hardened with resolve. As the ship drew closer, its cloaking systems seamlessly integrated with the station's blind spots. The docking maneuver was executed flawlessly, the ship latching onto an unguarded maintenance hatch. The squad disembarked in silence, their boots making barely a sound on the cold metal floors. They moved through the maintenance corridors, relying on a detailed map of the station's layout obtained through months of intelligence work. Every corner was a potential ambush, every shadow a possible threat. At one junction, the squad paused as an alien guard passed by, its towering frame casting an imposing shadow. The Marines waited, their breaths held, until the guard moved on. They advanced quickly, disabling cameras and bypassing locks with tools that combined human ingenuity and reverse-engineered alien tech. Deeper into the station, the squad encountered their first obstacle, a security checkpoint manned by alien soldiers. The squad leader signaled for a silent takedown. Two Marines moved in perfect synchronization, dispatching the guards with swift, precise strikes. The checkpoint was secured without raising an alarm, and the squad pressed on. Their target was the detention block, a heavily fortified section of the station. As they approached, the tension grew. The tactical officer worked to disable the electronic locks, his hands moving deftly over his console. "Almost there," he muttered, the seconds dragging on as the squad covered him, weapons trained on the corridor ahead. Finally, the locks disengaged with a soft hiss, and the Marines entered the detention block. The sight that greeted them was both harrowing and enraging. Rows of cells filled with emaciated prisoners, their faces hollow with despair. The squad leader's jaw tightened, but he kept his focus. "We're getting you out," he said firmly, his words cutting through the heavy silence. The prisoners, though weakened, began to stir, hope flickering in their eyes for the first time. The Marines worked quickly, breaking the locks on the cells and helping the prisoners to their feet. One prisoner, a woman with a defiant glint in her eyes despite her injuries, looked at the squad leader. "They'll come for us," she warned. "We're counting on it," the leader replied, his voice cold and determined. The extraction was underway, but the squad knew the hardest part was yet to come. Alarms blared as the station's security systems detected the breach. The Marines moved swiftly, guiding the prisoners through the corridors while covering every angle. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the halls, growing louder with each passing second. The squad leader signaled for the group to halt. "Hold this position," he ordered, setting up a defensive perimeter. The first wave of alien soldiers rounded the corner, their weapons glowing ominously. The Marines opened fire, their training and superior tactics turning the confined space into a kill zone. The firefight was brutal and intense. Alien soldiers fell in waves, but the Marines remained focused, their movements precise and coordinated. One Marine, a heavy weapons specialist, deployed a portable turret, its rapid-fire rounds cutting down enemies before they could advance. Amid the chaos, the tactical officer worked on bypassing the station's lockdown protocols. "I need 2 more minutes," he shouted, his fingers flying over his console. "You've got 1," the squad leader snapped back, firing at an advancing alien soldier. The Marines' discipline and resolve held firm, their actions embodying the very best of humanity's fighting spirit. As the final locks disengaged, the squad leader gave the order to move. The group pressed forward, carrying the injured and weak prisoners. The corridors ahead were clear, for now. The Marines knew the real challenge would be reaching their ship undetected. The squad reached the maintenance hatch just as reinforcements began to close in. The tactical officer activated the ship's docking mechanism, and the Marines hurriedly loaded the prisoners aboard. The last Marine through the hatch turned back, his weapon raised as he covered the retreat. The ship disengaged from the station, its engines flaring to life. As it disappeared into the void of space, the Marines knew they had succeeded in the first phase of their mission. But the battle was far from over. The Marines loaded the last of the prisoners aboard their ship, their bodies weak but their spirits lifted by the hope of survival. The ship's hatch sealed with a hiss, and the captain quickly relayed the order to take off. "All hands, prepare for evasive maneuvers," he barked, his voice unwavering. The ship's engines roared to life, and it shot forward, plunging into the cold vacuum of space. However, the station was not blind to their escape. Alarms blared across the Galactic Council stronghold as the breach was detected. Fighters scrambled into the void, their sleek forms cutting through the darkness in pursuit of the escapees. The ship's cloaking systems, temporarily disabled after the hasty extraction, struggled to mask their presence. The squad leader clenched his jaw. "We've got company. Get us out of here." The ship's pilot, a skilled veteran, initiated evasive maneuvers, his hands working the controls with expert precision. The ship lurched as it avoided a series of enemy missiles, which exploded against the empty void. The crew was on edge, but there was no panic. They had trained for this moment. The ship's weapon systems came online, and the Marines began tracking the incoming fighters. The first wave of enemy ships closed in, their blasters firing with deadly accuracy. The ship shuddered as several shots made contact, but the hull held. The tactical officer monitored the enemy's movements, calling out warnings and adjusting the ship's trajectory to dodge incoming fire. "They're splitting into two groups," he reported. "They'll try to trap us." The captain's voice was sharp. "Not on my watch. Return fire. Take them out." The ship's main cannon hummed to life as it locked onto the nearest enemy fighter. A bright flash of energy lit up the darkness, and the enemy ship disintegrated in a burst of flame. But the fight was far from over. The remaining enemy ships regrouped and began a coordinated assault, their laser fire streaking through the void like a deadly web. The Marines tightened their grip on their weapons, prepared for the next phase of the mission: survival. The ship's pilot executed a series of risky barrel rolls, each one narrowly avoiding the enemy fire. The ship's shields flickered as another volley of energy blasts slammed into them. The Marines held their positions, gritting their teeth as the ship continued to jolt under the stress of the battle. "Brace for impact," the captain shouted. Another round of enemy fire rocked the ship, sending it into a spin. The Marines scrambled to maintain their balance, grabbing hold of the nearest supports as the ship veered wildly off course. The pilot fought to regain control, his voice strained. "I've got this," he said, voice tight with effort. The tactical officer gave the order to fire at will. The Marines took positions along the ship's firing stations, their hands steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. They returned fire, each shot calculated and deadly. The enemy ships took hit after hit, their evasive maneuvers proving futile against the Marines' precision. One enemy fighter veered too close, its weapons locked onto the ship. Before it could fire, a Marine gunnery specialist fired a well-aimed blast, hitting the fighter's engine. The ship exploded in a fiery bloom, its wreckage drifting helplessly behind. But there were more. The second wave of enemy ships arrived, and the odds grew steeper. The ship's cloaking systems came online again, but it was too late to avoid the pursuit. The captain grimly observed the situation, knowing they had to make it through the next few minutes to ensure the safety of the prisoners. "Keep it tight," he ordered. "We can't outrun them, but we can outfight them." The ship's interior was filled with the low hum of engines and the constant tension of the battle. The tactical officer relayed the coordinates of nearby asteroid fields, offering potential cover. The captain nodded. "Take us in. Now." The pilot swung the ship hard to the left, the vessel diving into a dense cluster of asteroids. The jagged rocks appeared like looming giants, but they offered a brief moment of cover from the relentless pursuit. The enemy fighters followed, their weapons lighting up the dark expanse, but the asteroids made their targeting increasingly difficult. The ship weaved in and out of the floating rocks, avoiding collisions by inches. The Marines held their breath, knowing the margin for error was razor thin. One fighter came too close, grazing the side of the ship with a blast. The shields flared brightly, and the hull groaned under the strain, but the ship held steady. "Re-engage cloaking," the captain barked. The tactical officer worked furiously, sending commands to the ship's systems. Slowly, the ship faded into near invisibility, its outline blending with the surrounding space debris. The enemy fighters, now unable to track their target, began to circle the area, trying to pinpoint their quarry. The seconds stretched into what felt like hours, but the captain knew that staying hidden was their best chance. As the last of the enemy fighters pulled away, he allowed himself a brief moment of relief. "Prepare for jump," he ordered. The ship's engines powered up, ready to make the leap to faster-than-light travel. With the ship now safely beyond immediate pursuit, the Marines allowed themselves a moment to breathe. The journey back was far from secure, but they had achieved the impossible. They had escaped the Galactic Council's fortress, carrying with them not only the surviving prisoners but a message to the galaxy. Humanity would not be silenced. As the ship sailed through the quiet expanse of space, the captain looked out at the stars. It had been a hard-fought victory, but it was just the beginning. There were more battles to come, more enemies to face, and humanity would be ready. The ship surged forward, engines roaring as it pushed deeper into the cold vastness of space. The immediate danger had passed, but the Marines remained vigilant. The threat of pursuit still loomed, and every heartbeat felt like a countdown. The captain stood at the helm, eyes fixed on the tactical display, watching for any sign of enemy ships. His mind raced with the enormity of their mission, the risks they had taken, and the lives they had saved, but he knew this was only the beginning. The Galactic Council would not let this act of defiance go unanswered. In the crew quarters, the prisoners sat huddled together, their bodies exhausted but their eyes wide with the light of hope. Their ordeal was far from over, but for the first time since their capture, they felt something they thought they'd lost, a sense of agency. The sight of the Marines, their skill and dedication evident in every move, had instilled in them a quiet courage. The fire had returned to their eyes. The squad leader moved through the ship, checking on the wounded, speaking briefly with the prisoners. He kept his interactions short, focused on the task at hand. "Stay strong," he told them. "We'll get you to safety. You'll have your chance for justice." He spoke with conviction, but even he knew that the path ahead would not be easy. The tactical officer monitored the ship's sensors, scanning for any signs of enemy ships. The ship had sustained some damage during the battle, but nothing critical. The cloaking device was holding steady, giving them the upper hand for the time being. "We're clear for now," he reported, his voice sharp but cautious. "We should be able to reach the outskirts of neutral space without encountering more hostiles." The captain nodded, his eyes still fixed on the screen. The distance between them and the Galactic Council's reach was shrinking, but so were their supplies. The prisoners, though rescued, were still in dire need of medical attention, and they were running low on food and water. They couldn't afford to stop, couldn't afford to let their guard down, not even for a second. As the ship continued its journey, the captain knew they were facing a critical moment. The mission was a success, so far. But the message they had sent to the Galactic Council would echo across the galaxy, and that message would carry a heavy price. The Council would retaliate. The next confrontation would not be as simple as infiltrating a station or making a clean escape. Back in the communications room, the crew worked tirelessly to send a signal, not just to Earth, but to the galaxy. It wasn't just a call for help. It was a statement. A declaration. Humanity had no intention of bowing to the Galactic Council. The message would be clear. The human race had come to fight. The squad leader stepped into the communications room, his face hard, but there was an undeniable fire behind his eyes. "Prepare the transmission," he said. "We need to let the galaxy know what happened. Earth's not going to sit back while they execute our people. We're not going to stand by and watch the Council run roughshod over us. Not anymore." He turned to the communications officer, who was already working to encrypt the signal. "We need it to be seen," the leader continued. not just heard. Let every species in the galaxy hear us loud and clear. The officer nodded, fingers flying over the controls. We're good to go, he said, his voice steady. Sending it now. The message broadcast across the vastness of space, reaching countless systems. It wasn't just a plea for peace or an apology for the raid. It was a declaration of war. To the Galactic Council, the message began, the words sharp and resolute. We are humanity. We will not bow. We will not be silenced. Your actions have consequences, and those consequences will be paid in full. This is only the beginning. We will fight for our people, for our freedom. This is a promise. The transmission ended with the image of Earth, its blue and green surface a symbol of hope, defiance, and resilience. Back in the control room, the captain sat down, his eyes tired but resolute. The message had been sent. Now, all that remained was to face the inevitable consequences. The Galactic Council would not take this lying down. They would retaliate, and humanity would need to be ready. The ship continued its journey, slowly making its way to a neutral system where they could resupply and tend to the prisoners. There was a brief sense of relief, but the captain knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The raid had been a victory, but it had ignited a conflict that was far from over. Humanity had sent a message, and now the galaxy would know that Earth would fight for its own. As the ship approached the outer rim of neutral space, a sudden jolt rocked the vessel. The alarm blared, cutting through the relative calm. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. We've got incoming. The ship lurched as it veered into evasive maneuvers. The battle was far from over. The first salvo of enemy fire struck the ship's shields, and the tactical officer quickly assessed the damage. Shields are holding, but not for long. We need to get out of here. The captain gritted his teeth. They were far from safe, but they had come too far to turn back now. Brace for impact, he ordered, his voice steady, the weight of their mission pressing down on him. We fight. We never back down. The battle had only just begun, but humanity had made one thing clear: they would never kneel. They would never surrender. They would fight, and they would win.